And I'm fucking livid that we are stuck in the timeline where Alex Jones is right. As I said, democracy is a system that reinforces authoritarian ideals.
Why aren't the Amish afraid of COVID? Because they don't have TVs.
They were posting some crazy shit like months ago. Remember that?
You brought a freaking guillotine.
I did.
Being a victim of a tragedy doesn't make you an expert in public policy. Somebody telling them to stand up for their rights is disinformation. Kind of works.
Oh no! Oh, okay, no. You want to make the world a better place? Have some babies and raise them to not be stupid.
Man, governments are not going to like this shit.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, shit posters, activists, and people of the internet, thank you for joining tonight's episode of O'Donnell for Liberty. As always, I'm your host, Justin. Before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you can keep up to date for future shows. If you enjoy, you can be an early supporter of the program by following the Patreon link in the description and signing up to join the production team. If you want to keep in touch between shows, you can follow me on social media or you can join our community Discord channel. The links for those are also in the description. But tonight, we're going to be talking about branding, merch, and hardcore liberty, and we're going to take some questions, so make sure you hit that like button, leave some comments, and tell us what you think in the chat, and give a warm welcome to tonight's guest, minor niche internet celebrity, ukulele phenom, and brand ambassador for NOSYSKNOWS, the one and only Jessi Bennet. Jessi, thanks for joining tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hi.
So, you are a minor internet niche celebrity. I mean, you have more followers and more of a fan base than I do at this point. But like, what got you started? Who are you? What is the story of Jessi for those who don't know you?
Yeah, absolutely. Where to start? I mean, I guess where this gets interesting to this following base is probably when I became an intern at Emergent Order Foundation, which at the time was Emergent Order LLC. That is a small, liberty-minded creative studio based in Austin, Texas. I did an internship there through the Moving Picture Institute. So I essentially dropped out of college, ran away across the country, and decided I was going to make movies about freedom.
And I mean, that's what we all really need. I mean, I always advocate that politics is just downstream from culture, and the political climate of the world is just a representation of the culture we live in. And the root of culture is art, and film is really the most representative form of art that we can get out to influence people. So, I mean, what kind of stuff have you worked on? Like, what kind of stuff do you enjoy producing?
Yeah, no, 100%. So I'm currently an associate producer. That's actually a new update as of a couple months ago. Very excited about the new role. So out of the things we've worked on, I think my favorite things have probably been the Love Gov season 2. So for anybody who's not familiar with Love Gov, it's a web series that we did for the Independent Institute that essentially personifies the government as in season 1, a terrible boyfriend, and in season 2, a terrible landlord. It's a ton of fun. I'm a big fan of satire. You know, I think my favorite things to work on and be around are definitely more rooted in comedy, satire. Before taking this job, I did enjoy producing short horror films. And, you know, at some point I might get back to my horror roots. But, in the meantime, I'm loving what we do now. We also do the economics rap battles that are, I think, a big part of libertarian culture. Keynes versus Hayek was, you know, a huge thing that got so many people into the movement. And it was definitely an entry point for me. I watched it in an AP economics class in high school, and I was like, oh my God, this is interesting. We did Mises versus Mark a couple years back, which was definitely a ton of fun. Probably my favorite larger project we've done there was The Pursuit featuring Arthur Brooks. So that was before my time there, but I had the absolute honor of doing some of the rough mixes for it. I'm also our audio engineer before it went off to festival. So, you know, lots of projects all over the map, and everything's a blast.
You know, Haynes and Hayek, you're right. That was an incredible piece. Both of them. I do think the second one was way better. But every time it comes up and we show it to people, I'm like, the amazing part about this is like how you can tell just by the way it's scripted and the way like the acting is done, not even the rap, that the people who made it definitely favor Hayek. But they were very fair to Keynes's arguments in the rap. Like it wasn't straw manning or selling him down the river to make him look bad. It was like showing them both, but showing that Hayek was just railroaded from the beginning. And that kind of subtlety, like, really is what delivers the message. And so I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that giving two sides to an argument is very, very important, especially in media, right? Because you're releasing something, you're distributing something to the general public in most cases. That means the general public is going to see it. And if you favor one side too heavily, if you don't give the other side a fair fight, people are going to notice, they're going to call you out, and they're not going to receive the message as strongly. A fair fight in which you win is definitely a much stronger message than an unfair fight that you win.
Yeah, and there's always the old joke that there's no such thing as a fair fight. If you at least try and represent your opponent fairly, you can beat them even better. Moving on from that forward, you dropped out of college, ran across the country, did this wild, crazy thing, and found success at it. What's next for you? Like, what kind of projects do you see yourself working on in the future? Is there anything that you've always really wanted to do that maybe is considered don't touch this, that we're not there yet?
Sure. So I definitely see myself continuing with Emergent Order Foundation. We have a lot of really exciting things on the horizon. I absolutely adore the people I work for and with. I absolutely adore the content, and I could not ask for more in a career. I'm incredibly happy there. We have a lot of really exciting things going on. I can't say too much about them yet, but all I will say is keep an eye out for them. And I guess as far as personal stuff, I would love to do more with music and Liberty. I think that politics absolutely is downstream from culture, and I think that music is one of those things that is in our ears 24/7. So sure, you've got there's two kind of constants as far as our media intake, right? You've got your 24-hour digital notification, fear industrial complex nonsense. You've also got music in your ears most of the time. We live in an age where music is readily available 24/7. And I think that that could absolutely be a new method of outreach. It's definitely something that I personally would like to work with in the future.
There's definitely people who've been trying to use music to deliver a Liberty message. Like you have Eric July and Backwards and other bands like that. But what seems to me where they have failed is they are very on the nose, very blunt. They deliver the message of liberty with a sledgehammer instead of a needle. And so it doesn't get to anybody who's not already looking for it.
No, absolutely. And I think that the biggest component of that is people feeling like the ideas need to be in every single song or every single episode or whatever it may be. I think that, everything that we create is kind of a reflection of ourselves. So I think it's less about actually delivering the message and the content and more about getting people who believe in the message making the content.
Right. And I mean, that's what made Christian rock so successful in the metal and punk scenes when Christian bands started infiltrating them, is it wasn't every song. It was
metal
just
and punk
the overall
specifically,
message.
whereas the mainstream stuff, the
Right.
stuff that was more mainstream genre-wise was terrible. It wasn't making Christianity better. It was making rock worse.
Yeah. I remember
They tried
growing
too
up
hard.
loving Underoath. Underoath was one of my favorite bands of all time. I listened to every song. And then somebody's like, they're a religious Christian band? I'm like, bullshit. I had no clue for the first 5 years of being a hardcore fan of Underoath that they were a religious band. Because they did it well enough. They got their message to the people that would hear it, but still kept the fan base.
No, absolutely. And there's other day-to-day ways to get messages out there, though. Like, for instance, I am wearing one right now.
So go into that.
Ow, my cat just bit my new tattoo. I'm so sorry. I need to move the cat. She just bit me. I
don't know what it
Very
is about
professional
cats,
setup
but
I
they
have
hate-
here, as you can tell.
For my cat did the same thing
Yeah,
last
she
time
bit
I got
right
a
on my new
tattoo.
Lord, yes, I don't know what that was. You had said to get into that more. I'm going to address that question instead of continuing to be distracted by that.
So you're wearing your
NOSYSKNOWS
brand.
This really great brand that I've been doing some work with. Yes, so it's not my brand. I I ambassador for this brand though. It's called No System. You can go to look at more of their clothes at NOSYSKNOWS.com, and I'm sure Justin, you'd be more than happy to put that in the show notes. There it is. Thank you. So it's this wonderful brand that describes itself as anarchy, snarky, somewhere kind of in that realm. It's definitely less on the nose, and it's definitely that phenomenon that I just described, where really it's just people passionate about the issues making things. And so no, not everything needs to be 100% literal. Sure, some things might be, but it's just a passion project and a really, really good one.
Right. And I mean, how long have you been working with them? Because clothing and branding, that's something I really admire. I do some work on my own with Next Door, and the stuff I do is really on the nose, because I look at clothing and branding as something that's a little bit different than music, where you're reaching out to an audience and trying to get people to listen. With clothing, I mean, you can't be naked in public. You have to wear something. So you might as well wear something that says drop acid, not bombs, and make somebody who's going to see it anyways.
Sure. Or that says
forcibly think
anarchy
about
in
it.
the USA.
Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I started working with them probably 6 months ago or so. So it originally started when their amazing artist, lead guy, Brian Bim, who's a fantastically talented designer, reached out to me. And it's one of the funniest messages I've ever received in my life because of how perfect it was. He essentially sent me a message and said, yeah, I've been working on this clothing brand, and I really think I could target, like liberty-minded, young kind of punk rock women. I was like, so I'm the exact demographic.
Right.
And it's one of those things that's so niche that it works though, because being somebody in that exact market, I've never felt designed for. I've never felt like there were clothes out there that were so perfect for me, that fit me so well. And so as soon as he sent me the link and I looked through it, I was like, oh my God, like this is my brand. It's just a really exciting thing when you find something that feels so tailored to you. And I think that a lot of people can find collections at No System that fit that for them.
I think like the punk genre and like the punk fans is just a prime audience for Liberty too. The root of punk rock, even the root of pop punk and like emo music, is California skate punk, where it was just all anti-authoritarian. Like the root of the genre was writing songs about how the cops are ruining your life. And like that's the fan base they encourage.
Absolutely. And you can say the same for the culture.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that completely. I think that, what it really is that people have different brands of anti-authoritarianism these days.
Right.
I think that some of those may be more legitimate than others. But I think that anybody who has that, anti-collectivist streak in them is a winnable person. I think that there is there is a pipeline there. Anybody who's anti-collectivist, anti-system, wants to do something to change something, I think that's a malleable person, and I think that's a person that can be brought over. So I agree completely about those people that we should be reaching out to more. And I would even go so far as to say that most rock music is that way, because it all is stemming from the same things, right? Like if you look at the punk to one of my favorites, Midwestern emo pipeline, you're looking at a culture that's anti-system and that they don't like social structures in a lot of ways. They don't like the modern dating scene. They don't like being told what to do by their parents in some of the cases of younger bands. But there's still that streak of anti-system.
Right. I think even like the root of American rock and roll, like if you really want to trace it back, goes back to blues that were sung by slaves on plantations about yearning to be free and releasing the bonds of slavery and the shackles of their masters. And like that's what eventually evolved into what we know as rock and roll and the rock and roll culture in the United States.
Nope, I agree with that completely.
So when are you releasing when are you going to release your ukulele album?
Oh my God. Two things. One, never. Unless people really want me to. Two, I was so shocked by the positive feedback on that. It was just this silly little thing I was going to do. I found a ukulele in my room that I played in high school, and I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder if I still have it. Played a silly little song, sight read it on my camera. I was like, I'm just going to post this on Twitter because I just post whatever I want anyways. And the support that I received was astounding.
You didn't know there were that many Midwest emo fans on Twitter and Liberty Twitter.
I don't even know if it was. I think I started with like classic pop punk stuff. But yeah, I was just really amazed at how supportive it was. And I think that there's something to be said for that, you can kind of use social media to build and cultivate these little audiences that are supportive and sweet and kind and growing with you in their own ways and doing their own hobbies and posting them. And I just think it's kind of a beautiful little thing that we've kind of created.
Yeah, I think the first one of your ukulele videos I actually saw was cute without the E. And I got excited enough. I think I started doing the alternating lyrics in different comments. Like
that makes me so happy. That was a really highly requested song that is in such an awkward range for me. It's like right on the cusp of my chest and head voice. So I'm like, well, guess I'm screaming this one.
Well, that is two completely different ranges with two vocalists.
Hey, look, I think I made it work, kind of.
Oh, you did. You definitely did it better than Josh. I'll give you that much credit.
Come on.
So I mean, what do you see as like the future for the Liberty movement? If we can get people wrapped up more in music, more in branding, more in actually pushing out there. Like, how receptive do you think the normals, the muggles, the non-liberty people, or even the people right on the edge, because we're seeing a lot of people developing an anti-authoritarian streak in this new world order of COVID lockdowns? Like, what do you think the role of culture is, as opposed to politics, in bringing down those systemic structures and bringing down government tyranny and government oppression?
Sure. So I think it's exactly as you just stated it, right? It's that culture is downstream from politics. It's kind of rooted in the like very basics of what we talk about, right? Like praxis. It's right there, kind of almost definitionally, that we need to be thinking about these sorts of things. Psychology is a school of pre-economic thought in a lot of ways. So I think that the future is really what we make it as a movement. I think that people have their own ways of going about it. You've got your agorists, you've got your doomers, you've got your little bit of everything. And I think that people are going to go out and they are going to recruit people to whatever their method may be. And I think that only time will tell. But that reaching those people is step one. And so culture is the way to do it.
So, of all the stuff we are doing, I mean, we're going in the culture. We have people like you with brand ambassadorship. We have people like Eric July, who's making music. We have others doing the same thing. We have people like Top Lobster, who's just going into just traditional digital media and art, trying to reach people in a humorous way. I see this as a positive step for the Liberty movement, as someone who's been involved in the Libertarian Party and the Liberty movement for a long time, and not seeing anything. I served on the board of the Libertarian Party for 2 terms, and we struggled to get people even to make good memes to share on the Libertarian Party social media. And now all of a sudden there seems to be this huge uptick in the past year or two of people who are disengaging from the political side of things and engaging in the cultural side of things. What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, so I think that it honestly started in my opinion, not a very good place. I think it started as a reactionary philosophy almost. And this is purely anecdotal, just with what I've seen in my conversations with people. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, but I think that people saw these cultural movements that are based in things like intersectionality that they were opposed to. I think a lot of people went too far the other way, but I think that as people saw this battle happening, I think that these very cool, very sane people said, you know what? I've got an opinion about this too. And so even if it did start somewhere negative, I think that it's really about, making the best of it. And I think that it's overall going to be a change for good.
No, I really think that this has shown like the potential for bottom unity and liberty unity, and people who are just in the new political spectrum no longer being right left, but being authoritarian and anti-authoritarian. When you have people embracing cultural ideals of anti-authoritarianism in art and in music and in film. It was just a couple of years ago when I remember when the Captain America movie came out, Salon ran an article complaining that they turned Captain America into an asshole libertarian. That stuff like that is starting to permeate culture, and that we have like major characters in major film productions representing libertarian ideas. I joked a week or so ago on Twitter that the Parks and Rec's attempt to insult libertarians did more for creating a positive image of libertarianism than the Libertarian Party has in 50 years, when they created Ron Swanson as a parody.
I saw that. It's absolutely true. And it's so funny that you brought that tweet up, because I saw it. I tweeted about the same thing, like before we were mutuals or anything.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because that was like my first one to blow up. And I think the fact that it resonated with people kind of says it all.
Yeah, people don't realize, like, Nick Offerman is not a libertarian. And Nick Offerman has talked about the character of Ron Swanson, saying it was supposed to be a parody of libertarians and making fun of them. And, like, he didn't understand why all of his fans were libertarians.
It's really another way to win, though, right? To be able to be tough enough to be made fun of and to take it in as a part of yourself, even go that step further. I think that, so I'm in Gen Z, right? And I have these kinds of conversations all the time with people. And a lot of my generation can't handle hearing things that they disagree with, can't handle being made fun of. There's a certain lack of mental toughness there. And I think that, our circles tend to be the exception. And I think that there's a lot to be said for that. I think that ability to hear other viewpoints, be made fun of, and to laugh it off and or even make it a part of how you see yourself is kind of an amazing thing. And the fact that Ron Swanson was so embraced, to me, says that in the end we'll win, because we're tough.
Yeah, no, the best part about it is, like, as myself as an anarchist, I think Ron Swanson might have had something to do with me becoming an anarchist, because I started identifying as a libertarian after leaving the military and having issues with power structures and unlawful orders that I was given in the military, and seeing the things that we were doing that I considered unconstitutional. And it wasn't until, like, my involvement in the liberty movement where I started to come to the realization, like, no, it's irredeemable. Fuck all of this. We need to tear it to the ground. And that was right around the time I was binge watching Parks and Rec, because everyone had recommended it. But, like, to me, it was like, and I don't have a problem saying the edgy shit. Like, the bureaucrats are the real problem. And I think, like, there's a particular Parks and Recs episode, one where the pony dies, and Ron Swanson has a comment when he walks into the office.
Well,
he's
Sebastian.
Like, he's like, I walked into the office today and I saw the flag at half mast. My first thought was, nice, another bureaucrat bit it. And, like, that's the mentality I think so many like people like me have been taking on Twitter recently, and has been causing chafing within the liberty movement, like, where you have, like, the pragmatic libertarians who are more like, we need to be more respectful, like respectability politics. We need to deliver our message where the moderates will hear it, and we'll need to convert people to libertarianism. And people like me realizing, like, we have failed for 50 years to convert people to libertarianism. We need to get people to wake up to libertarianism. And we're not going to do that by, like, being polite and hoping they see our message. We need to be it in their face with it. We need to be aggressive with it, and stuff like branding and music and media and art is the way to do that.
So I'm going to politely, partially disagree with you. I think it's about knowing your audience and knowing who you're talking to. If you're having a conversation with a random person on the street, I don't think that, by going all edgy on conversation one is necessarily the best way to go about it. If you happen to have a Twitter audience like mine that has a lot of variation, I have literal communists that follow me. And you know what? Putting a little bit of messaging in my silly tweets is going to do a lot more than coming out right and saying, oh, you're an idiot if you believe in Marx, even though I might think it's true.
Sure. I'm not going to say, like, when working petition drives and doing campaigning and door knocking, having individual conversations with people is great when you're focusing on topics that they care about. And I've gotten a lot of people to come around to libertarian ideas on certain topics, but not to the idea of libertarianism or self-ownership or freedom in general, because people are so hyper-focused on what they care about. Well, I've had far more success in people following me and people signing up for my newsletters and watching my videos by being inflammatory. And I've reached a bigger audience this way. And it's something that took me a long time to come to grips with, that, like, saying shit like Timothy McVeigh did nothing wrong is going to piss a lot of people off, but it's going to start a conversation.
Who?
And the people, Timothy McVeigh.
Or do I want to know? I don't want to know. Probably.
Ted Kaczynski.
Oh.
Either of them. But no, we had a thing where myself and Reed went on a tear on Twitter saying, like, Ted Kane, Timothy McVeigh did nothing wrong. And we knew it was going to piss a lot of people off. But the difference was, like, they started sharing our message well beyond our liberty spheres, and we started getting comments and reactions from people who were not libertarian, who we were able to engage in conversation with about the libertarian ideas, and how that the government was the real enemy, and that people who take action against the government are working to tear down systems that are enslaving people today. And we would have never had a chance to even reach those people if we didn't piss off 1,000 others.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely fair in certain situations. But, there's always this conversation that's happening in the space about the ideas themselves, where people say that black and white thinking is a huge issue. I think that taking that same thinking and only applying it to your strategy, or only applying it to your outreach initiatives, I think is kind of hypocritical if you want to get it out of the thought itself. And I'm not addressing you, because if that works for you and your audience, that's totally fine. But I think that there's a lot of people who say, oh, well, I need to take this specific branding thing that worked for me once and apply it to every single initiative I do. And that's a huge problem. And that does represent us poorly.
Well, that's something like Caitlin Cleven likes to talk about when she's doing campaign management for libertarian candidates, is saying the fatal flaw of libertarians is they succeed at one thing and think they can reproduce it, but no campaign strategy is reproducible because no election is identical. And everybody keeps trying to, like, we'll get one guy elected and the Frontier Project is going to run with that exact same strategy for the next 15 years and wonder why they failed because it worked the first time.
Yep, absolutely.
So beyond the messaging, beyond the radical rhetoric and like tearing systems down, what was it that brought you to libertarianism? What was it that brought you to the liberty movement?
Yeah, sure. So I always joke that I was born an anarchist and stayed one. So according to my poor parents, I started calling myself an anarchist like as a child. I don't even know where I would have heard the word. And I don't necessarily know that it's even true. That sounds like the kind of goofy thing a parent would say a little bit wine drunk over Thanksgiving dinner. But I've kind of stuck with it because I remember being very upset about school rules very young and just different things I had to do. And I think that everybody's born an anarchist, right? But the thing that activated that was seeing the Keynes-Hayek rap battles in my AP Econ class. From there, I just, for whatever reason, that triggered something in my head that made me want to dive in. I read Rothbard. I said, oh, I really am an anarchist. And the rest is history. But then in college, I got involved with Young Americans for Liberty and Students for Liberty. And we also had lots of other orgs that I'd interacted with throughout, my little activism. And the rest is history. I mean, being around like-minded people was absolutely a huge component of that. Being able to actually discuss these ideas with somebody face to face, I think is really at the heart of it. And I really encourage everybody who most of their interactions are virtual on these topics to go out, try to find people that think like you, you stand to gain a lot from it.
I feel like that's difficult for a lot of people just because libertarianism is a niche philosophy. It's not widely popular. It's not widely accepted. And finding people in an urban center that agree with you is difficult.
Who have read the works. Okay, to every single person who's watching this, make a group me and see what happens. Make a meetup group on one of those apps and just see what happens. Yep. Put up a Facebook post. Say, hey, if you're in this area and you tend to agree with some of my opinions listed below, let's start a group. Let's start a club. I guarantee you can find at least one person if you're in an urban center. We've got a group here in Austin. It's the last place you'd ever expect, called the Austin ANCAPs. Our group chats range from 10 to 50 people that show up at these events. It's absolutely amazing.
I mean, I feel like I have it a lot easier. I live in New Hampshire. I live in pretty much an anarchist community that ignores the city government around it. And we have our agorist marketplaces. Amazing. And that's just a product of the Free State Project encouraging a bunch of autistic people to move to one state. But that is the problem that I do find with a lot of libertarians. Is it seems to be that it is a niche philosophy. It is a fringe political movement, and it tends to attract people who aren't good at communication, who aren't good at forming relationships, who aren't good at being extroverted and going out there and doing things like branding, art, messaging, and communicating with people. And so we've struggled greatly over the past 50 years of libertarianism by putting people to the forefront who couldn't communicate their ideas and didn't have any idea how to communicate their ideas. And I see that a lot here in our local community where we have libertarians out the wazoo. My landlord's a libertarian. My neighbor's a libertarian. Nick Sarwark lives down the street from me. I hesitate to call him a libertarian sometimes. But we have these agorist marketplaces and you go there and it'll turn into petty bickering and arguing over minutia of economics rather than people discussing how to work together to end the state.
Yeah, absolutely. And, my response to that is about what I just said. Talk to more people. I am literally telling you all to touch grass.
That's racist.
It's kind of funny because that is one of those. It is?
Yeah, I think Twitter was saying touch grass is cultural appropriation.
I don't care. It's a common internet phrase. Everybody knows that it did not come from a hateful place. It came from silly internet trolls making fun of each other for both being keyboard warriors. That's where it came from. There was no malintent there. I will not stop saying it. All of you need to go touch grass, make a meetup group, talk to more people, even if they don't agree with you 100%. Even people who are still statist enough to call themselves socially liberal, fiscally conservative are movable people. Go make friends with them. Go outside. Talk to girls.
That's the one I think they really need. But if they can handle the crazy with some of them, God.
Or if we can make the movement a little bit more welcoming to them.
Hey, all right. All I'm going to say is I once asked a friend of mine why she believed there were so few women in the liberty movement, and she came back with, because the women that are here treat all the newcomers like shit because they're jealous.
That's so awful. I've never seen that happen.
It might not happen in places like Yale or in big cities. I think it's pretty common in actual close physical communities, where we have, again, one of my biggest criticisms of the Free State Project is the idea of trying to convince people to uproot their entire lives, their families, their jobs, their careers, and everything, and move across the country for a political philosophy. You're not going to get the best of the best people. You're going to get the kind of people who didn't have anything holding them to where they were. You're going to get people who didn't have family connections holding them there, didn't have tight-knit social groups that they didn't want to leave and abandon, people who didn't have stable careers and had the flexibility and ability to just pick up everything, leave, drive across the country and plant down new roots just for a political philosophy. And the Free State Project goes out of their way to just criticize people who don't move, saying you're not a real libertarian if you don't live in New Hampshire, rather than like encouraging people to come build a more thriving community. And so I think we do get a lot of great people who do move for the Libertarian Free State Project, but we also get a lot of people who there's a reason they weren't happy and successful where they were, and it wasn't libertarianism. It wasn't the politics of where they were. And so, like, if you had trouble and you were had a lot of drama and social issues where you were, moving is not going to change those. If it's you, that's the problem. And I think that's a problem in any community, libertarian or not. It's just heightened when it's all that you deal with.
No, I agree completely. And I think that every other ideology has kind of formed their social bubbles around said ideology, right? So they don't get that same exposure to other ideas and other people that we do. And I think that's kind of part of the problem is now there's almost this world where some people are turning to virtual only communications as a way of mirroring that behavior and making their own bubble. So although I say go outside, touch grass, talk to other libertarians, don't only talk to other libertarians. It's a little more nuanced than that. But no, I don't have a whole lot of familiarity with the Free State Project as so far as like their messaging and all of that. But if it is as you described it, that definitely sounds like an issue.
Yeah, it's something that I've criticized them on. It's something other people have criticized them on. I myself am not a Free Stater. I did not move to New Hampshire for the Free State Project. I moved for work and made friends with Free Staters because they were people who shared my ideology about government and community morals. But like, I think this really highlights something that until very recently, politics wasn't the crux of somebody's social environment and somebody's social life. Even when I lived in Massachusetts and I was a registered Republican and I voted Republican in blue Massachusetts, that wasn't the center of my social life. And I had friends all over the political spectrum and a community that was thriving and vibrant all over the political spectrum. And it was never divisive like it is now. I think that like political focus and like ideological focus on who you associate with is a very new thing to American society in the past 10-ish years, but it's not new to libertarians because libertarians have been self-isolating from their communities at large for the past 50 years because fringe movements tend to do that. And I do think I criticize libertarians, not just in the Free State Project, but everywhere, to stop using the Libertarian Party and the Liberty Movement as their social club. Like, these are your fellow activists working on goals that you should be helping advance each other's goals, but you should also have friends. And your friends don't necessarily have to be your political party, because when your friends and your political party are the same thing, when there's any kind of drama or infighting in the political party, it ripples through your entire social environment as well. And that's where we see the cascading drama in the Liberty Movement when the LNC has a bickering fight and it destroys friendships of people on the other side of the country who weren't even connected to it.
You are also advising people to touch grass.
I guess. Or like, go to your local comic shop, make friends with the nerds. The people who go to your local comic shop, make friends with the nerds, go to concerts, make friends with people who you share things in common with other than politics, because like, I don't disagree with any of that. I think there's nothing wrong with having like-minded people in your life,
but it shouldn't be your guiding principle for making friends. That being said,
Yeah.
I would say that building those kinds of circles in your in-person life is definitely something that's undervalued. I think that a lot of these online relationships, as fun as they may be to have your shit posting buddies, there's also a lot of value in having people to go out and do things with who agree with you. And, there's value in having people who disagree with you to go out and do things with, so long as the state lets you leave your house.
Well, and that's really the big problem. Well, if we're going to touch on that, like, that's the big problem. We can preach all we want about, like, touching grass, mingling with your community, and integrating in your community and not letting your politics isolate you. But when the government's the one doing it, it really has, I think, exacerbated a lot of the issues with, I call it the liberty diaspora, because libertarians do treat themselves like an immigrant diaspora and not integrating into the community at large and only associating with each other. It's really integrated that, and everything has become so hyper politicized that nobody is engaging outside of their circle. Not even Republicans or Democrats. It's just all in their circle, all on Zoom, all on Twitter. And let's be honest, social media is a cesspool of disagreement, and nobody's ever going to be happy if that's their only form of communication with the world.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with any of that. It's on the nose.
Unless they're going to be sharing art and media. So
there it is.
Back to the art and media. What would you say has been your favorite representation of libertarianism in, let's go with different media. Let's start movie. What's been your favorite representation of libertarianism in a movie?
Am I allowed to just like pick stuff we've made? Because I'm not. Emergent Order.
Sure.
Such great content.
Go.
In a movie, I'll branch out. Give me 10 seconds. Okay, I've got one. Silence of the Lambs. Hear me out. The FBI are morons in that. They get better advice from a literal serial killer on how to take this guy down, and the FBI is just fumbling the ball the whole time. It's amazing. I actually was legitimately a little bit of a red pill for me. I love horror films, and as soon as I saw that one, I was like, "Oh man, the vets are really fucking this up."
Have you seen the Richard Jewell movie?
I don't think it was even intentional. No, I haven't.
Have you? So, in the Richard Jewell movie, that's one to me that's incredible because it's based on a true story. Where at the Atlanta Olympics, when somebody had set off a bomb in the crowd outside the Olympics, and the ATF and the FBI were investigating it, and they just honed in on one dude who was a security guard, and they tried to frame him for the bombing just so they could say they had a suspect and say that they closed the case so it wouldn't interrupt the Olympics publicity. And the movie about it's incredible. And the movie shows him just like a normal dude who's like a little bit off, not really the most stable dude, but like just being railroaded and framed by government agents because they wanted to close the case, not because they cared about catching the bomber, but because they wanted the news cycle to stop so the Olympics would go on.
Yep.
And
yeah, no, that one looked interesting. I haven't seen the film. I remember when it was first being advertised. It definitely looked good.
All right. What about music?
Music. I gotta go classic Ramones. There's that anti-authority streak there that's not even on the nose. It's more in just how they conduct themselves and less woven into the music itself. I think that there's a certain attitude to punk music like that I think is just amazing. It's hard because some of the ones that are more literal, of course, are leftist. Like I would love to say Anti-Flag. If every song they put out was like Die for Your Government, that would definitely be my number one. But
here's the thing is I love the leftist punk rock. And to me, it's because they don't focus on the leftist angle of it in the punk rock for the most part. Like you don't hear
They're
Rise
aggressively
Against.
Anti-war is like the number one topic you're going to hear.
Right. Like to me, one of the best like libertarian bands that I listen to is Rise Against. And they are anarcho-communist, socially off the left, like as far as you can go. Like they don't think Bernie Sanders would go far enough. But like in their music, like their newest song that just came out, Nowhere Generation, is about how the government doesn't have power unless the people just give it to them. They had their song Hero of War, which is one of the greatest anti-war songs I've ever heard, because it's told from the perspective of a young kid who was lied to and brainwashed to go into the military and to fight a banker's war. And like they have Ready to Fall, which is about people finally taking the fight to who it needs to be taken to and being ready for the consequences. And then like if you want to stick within like the left anarchist punk rock, you have Rage Against the Machine, and nobody's ever going to say that Rage Against the Machine was pro-authoritarian until 2020.
Exactly. Well, and for a less punk example too, for any
Right.
listeners that aren't necessarily as into that, there's an alt rock band I would highly recommend that hits on a lot of these themes. Very accessible alt rock called New Politics. They're like criminally underrated in my opinion, but they have this one song called CIA. Crazy well-produced alt rock song. Basically, the refrain is, "I break the rules at my house. I'm like the CIA." It's a great song. It's a great band. You guys should totally check it out. New Politics.
All right.
Oh, and No System puts out music as well. So definitely go listen
Really?
to that. It's on the website.
Okay, now I have to
Yeah.
go listen to it.
It's not just an
All right.
apparel brand. The brand itself is the art project. That was another thing that
Okay.
really compelled me to get involved when Ryan first reached out.
All right. And like, what is your favorite piece of swag over at Gnosis? Like, if you were going to
My
tell
favorite
somebody
what?
who's your favorite piece of swag, like if you had to give a gift to somebody
Thanks for
who's
breaking
not a
up.
libertarian, if you had to give a gift to somebody who's not a libertarian, who isn't like already bought in on anarchy and the message that Gnosis is trying to deliver with their swag, what piece of apparel on that website would you give them?
Well, I would tailor my gift to the person. If they're a fan of punk who's not necessarily liberty oriented, I would look at the season 3 shirts, which are the Badasses of Thought. So that project is where basically classic punk logos are reimagined to convey the names of popular economists. So if I was talking to somebody who's a classic punk band, I would find out their favorites and I would get them the equivalent shirts. The one I'm wearing right now is really great too. Just Anarchy in the USA. It's definitely very stylized, very punk. You don't necessarily need to be an anarchist to enjoy the style behind it. There's a new shirt out now that just says yada, yada, yada. Super vague, vaguely anti-authoritarian, and you can't really say why. You just know that it is. And I think there's tons of swag on the website that's like that. You can't quite explain it, but you just know that it's against the system. I guess my favorite is this shirt I'm wearing right now, though. It's been my go-to.
Awesome. All right. Well, I know that you have.
Sorry, I
places
could
to
have
be
picked
tonight.
one. It's just all too good.
No,
I
I
do,
feel
yes.
the same. I feel the same way about my own swag and my own stuff. Is like, well, which one do you give somebody? I'm like, I don't know. I like all the crypto stuff. I like the drop acid, not bombs shirt that I make. Which one do you want? It's like I have trouble picking. Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No,
like,
we have
I know,
one that says Satoshi's name in like a heavy metal font that's almost unreadable. It's hilarious. That whole line is just so funny to me. There's also
I know-
transitory inflation where you just can't even read it. It's great.
one of your pictures on Twitter, you're wearing like the Von Mises shirt, and like at first it caught me off guard because I was like, does that say non-Mises? Because like the font, I couldn't tell the difference with the V or the N. I'm like, what what does that actually say? Like, doesn't make sense. And it took me a couple minutes to get it. But I'm like, oh,
Yeah, it's not
I get it. No, I know you have to go tonight. You got stuff to do, and you have Hard Stop coming up, and we know this is going to be a short show. We're coming up on our 45 minutes. Tell everyone where they can follow you, where they can get more information about what you're doing, and reach out to you if they have any more questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Jessi Nicole B, or you can just look me up. I'm Jessi Bennet. Not necessarily the most professional on Twitter. I've been called a shit poster. I don't know how true that is, but you can also see some bad ukulele covers. It's lots of fun. That's definitely the best way to keep up with me, though. I do also post announcements on what I'm doing. You can follow at NOSYSKNOWS on Twitter for updates on the brand. Emergent Order Foundation does not have an active Twitter account at the moment, but you can check out Emergent Order's YouTube. Any announcements about future projects would be posted there. And I would just like to make clear really quickly to anyone still listening that I am not an official representative of Emergent Order Foundation. They are my employer, and I love them, so I like to talk about them. But yeah, those are the 3 places you can check out all of the things I've been talking about tonight, and I hope that you guys enjoyed the show.
All right. And thank you again so much for coming on. And until next time, everybody, be free. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to catch more, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications for future episodes. You can follow me directly on Twitter at O'Donnell, the number 4NH, to keep up to date with what I'm working on. And if you want to be among the first to support this channel, check out our Patreon link in the description. And as always, don't forget to head on over to sneckswag.com to get your freshest Liberty swag today. Until next time, be free, everybody.